Well, hello. Welcome back to this series, The Discipline Files. This is Coach UV, and I'm with the Unique Trading Group. Listen, this is an important series that we do week to week, month to month, to get newbies and traders, aspiring traders, to think about trading in a different aspect. You must strengthen your mind, and you must understand that it is a skill in trading, all right? Even when you define your edge, you have an edge in trading, all right? Even when you're executing flawlessly, right, with a clear state of mind, all right? There are still self-sabotaging beliefs that hinder us all as traders, all right? Remember that trading is a reflection of who you are. Personal development. The computer cannot make any moves unless you click those buttons. So where are you buying? Why are you buying? That's what we're going to be focusing on. And this episode of the Discipline Files is a true nature of trader. Understanding a true nature of a trader. All right. So I hope you guys have been catching up so far. If you haven't, check out the other Discipline Files I have. Part 1, Part 2. All right, and we're going to continue these, all right? Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4 has already been done, so this is Part 5. So check out the other series so that you can catch up to date, all right? And that way you guys will know where we're going from there on forth, all right? So again, busy, new, a little skeptical about trading stocks. You're exactly who I help. You ready to stop guessing and start trading with purpose? Welcome to a future-forward approach to options market, all right? It's built on precision, confidence, and a 3-step system that I created, right? It's designed to help you read the market like a book before it's even written, all right? This isn't a cookie cutter course, all right? This is a one-on-one coaching, tailored, tactical, and built around growth. If you're serious about leveling up your trading, managing risk like a pro, and catching the right moves before the crowd, you're in the right place. So smash that like button, consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already, and hitting that bell notification. That way you're notified when I drop valuable videos just like this one, all right? This is about mindset, not money, the process, okay? This is the Discipline Files. Hope you guys are ready. Grab your notes and enjoy the commentary. This is from Mark Douglas, all right? Thinking like a professional. And this is part 5 of the series that I wanted to give to you guys. So grab your popcorn, whatever you need. Hope you guys enjoy it. And we're going to get straight into it right after this break, all right? Peace.
What we're running into is this, is that when you learn how to define an edge and learn how to execute your trades flawlessly, what you're now exposed to is the possibilities for unlimited wealth. There's really nothing holding you back. Well, let's put it this way, there's nothing on the outside that's holding you back, but there might be something on the inside that's holding you back. Those things on the inside could be self-sabotaging beliefs. In the sense that if you listed all of the experiences that contributed to a positive sense of self-valuation and all experiences that contributed to a negative sense of self-valuation, that I'm not worthy as a person, I feel guilty about this, and this, that you could end up, you can go plus negative, or net positive or net negative. What could end up happening is that if you don't have the, let's say, the skills or the awareness to realize that as your equity curve, as you start making money, these internal forces, if you have net negative, these internal forces start building up to the point where they'll cause you to make unconscious trading errors, where you're not even really aware that you hit the sell button instead of the buy button. Those kinds of things. And you have to become aware of when these forces are starting to build up inside of you, and either compensate for it by not trading, to stop trading, or to find a way to neutralize them. And there are various techniques available. But all I'm saying is that these kinds of errors that are the result of self-sabotaging beliefs don't really have anything to do with your direct trading skills. In other words, your ability to identify an edge and your ability to execute your trade. But they can have an enormous impact on your equity curve.
I would assume that you would be monitoring your equity curve, and you would start seeing your curve go down in an abnormal way. And you would start looking for whatever's happening to you. Let's say you're not feeling well, or whatever, your wife just divorced you. Or maybe something.
Yeah, these
subtle.
are all good things, right?
Things
that you're bringing up. I mean, these are things
what
that are all
I'm
relevant.
saying is, though, you show two extremes: a normal drawdown, and then the boom or bust drawdown. There must be some way to know. At least I'm looking for to know when you start looking that you're self-sabotaging. That's my question.
Good question. As a matter of fact, there are software programs available now that will tell you that. There are software programs available that will tell you when, in other words, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. When I was working with traders, with especially like hedge fund managers and larger traders, there are people. First of all, there are people that their sole job was, if they were, let's say they were central. Here, let me think about how important this is. They had, let's say they're in the middle. And they've got, let's say, 10 or 12 money managers. These are guys that all have, they're managing funds, okay? This guy's sole responsibility was to shift money from here to here to here to each manager based on chart patterns of their equity curves. In other words, they would chart the equity of these particular traders, just like price patterns in the market, to determine their potential for inordinately large drawdowns because of self-sabotaging beliefs. That's how sophisticated the market has become. That's how relevant these issues are. So that you can actually chart your equity, and then you start to go like this. Oh, well, and then do another one like that. Something's happening here, okay? I mean, it was really kind of amazing to me when I was working with floor traders especially. I mean, this one guy, this pops into my brain just as we're talking about this. I mean, he came in for a consultation, and he had his worst day in his life ever. Worst trading day, lost more money than what he's ever lost in his life. And I said, well, and it's like normally, almost virtually, in every case, something catastrophic's happening in that person's life. But what was always amazing to me is how much of a disconnect that the person would have between the catastrophic event in their life and what they ended up doing as a trader in the market. And I said, well, what's going on? And I just said, well, what's going on? And he's kind of... well, yeah, my wife and I had this really bad argument last night, and when I left for the exchange this morning, he slapped his kids around and he kicked his dog, and it's like, and then he came in and had his worst day and didn't make the connection between what happened at home and what he did on the floor. I mean, he might have felt completely justified with the argument that he had with his wife in slapping his kid around and kicking the dog, but that's what's going on consciously. But let's say subconsciously, everyone has, let's say if a person's relatively normal, not a psychopath, they've got some sense of fairness, and he feels guilty about what he did, and he took that guilt out in the way he traded that day. The market is not a good arena to be doing this, by the way. Okay, this is not a good area to be working these kind of emotional issues out. Go ahead. We need the microphone. You want me to put it right here, and I'll just hand it to him?
My next question would be the market also changes. The patterns or your edge may change in relation to the market. To distinguish between your own troubled state, let's say, and market behavior, I can see that maybe one of these fellows here in the pie there might be using a system that is not as valid as it used to be when the market changes. How would you know, if you were the guy in the center, whether he was just having a bad stay with whatever's going on in his personal life versus a change in his system in relation to the market?
Another good question. You wouldn't know immediately, but upon investigation you could find out. In other words, by just talking to the guy, or what you do is that, see, See, what you do is you trade in sample sizes too. In other words, when you have a particular methodology that has a defined criteria for when you get into a trade, what you do is you trade in a limited sample size, so that if you trade in 25 trade sample sizes, or like 20 or whatever, what you do is you analyze your results at the end of a sample size, and if your results are satisfying, then what you do is you take another sample size. If the results are not satisfying, then because you knew exactly what you did and under what circumstances you did it, you limited your variables. What you do is then you can go back and tweak your variables to see if you can improve your results. Because what's your name? Tom. Because what Tom was really bringing up is the fact that you're right, because we're taking a limited set of variables, like mathematical formula, that's being applied to a dynamic event, and that dynamic event are traders who are acting on their own behalf, creating price movement, and they create patterns that were doing the same thing over and over again, but you've got new people coming in with new ideas and old people leaving, and as a result these patterns can change over time, diminishing the results of a particular edge. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your sample size is large enough to adequately test that edge, but small enough so that if the edge is diminishing in its effectiveness, you're not losing an inordinate amount of money before you find that out. Does that answer your question? So that's how they find out. Okay. Besides that, there's software available that'll even tell you now. There's software available that'll track your edges, or to track your equity in a way that can indicate whether or not you're ready to take a hit. I don't know the name of it, but because I just found out about it myself. So,
what are some other ways that you can address maybe a emotional problem you might be going through, or other things outside of the trading area besides stop trading?
Well, when you say there are a number of techniques, a number of books available. There's counseling. I'm going to make a recommendation of a particular book later on. When we get into a little bit more detail, but it depends on the effect that it has on your trading. I mean, you don't necessarily have to stop trading, but you have to make an objective assessment as to your state of mind. In other words, you can actually say to yourself, am I in the best state of mind to be trading today? And and the kind of answer that you get back from yourself, if it's relatively objective, it's like if you're really not in the best state of mind because of things that are going on in your life and some troubling aspects that you haven't reconciled, but you don't want to stop trading, well, at least you're aware of it. Another technique would be by keeping journals, because most really good traders keep pretty extensive journals about what they're doing and what they're thinking while they're doing it. And then you make this assessment so that at least if you don't want to stop trading, you still want to put whatever edges on you have for that day, you scale back. In other words, if your maximum position size is, let's say, 5,000 shares, you're not in the best state of mind, maybe you only want to trade 1,000. Maybe you only want to trade 500. In other words, to take these things into consideration. And you'd be surprised by just being aware of it and taking into consideration, a lot of times these things will reconcile themselves. Does that help you?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay, and the last area of these broad skill sets that we're talking about is develop the ability to recognize if you've crossed the threshold from normal self-confidence into a state of euphoria. You guys are laughing. I finally got some giggles out of you guys here. What's so funny about this? Anybody want to share? What? What's that?
You don't want to be in a state of euphoria.
No, you're right. I mean, being in a state of euphoria, let's put it this way. The primary, let's say, the primary characteristic of the state of euphoria is that it's a state of mind of complete and absolute risklessness. Everybody get what I just said? You are in a state of risklessness. In other words, you have no ability whatsoever to perceive risk. So if, for an example, if this line right here, if below this line represents normal self-confidence, and above this line is euphoria, and this threshold's different for everybody, by the way. I mean, there are certain chemicals that scientists have found that, that flood our mind and our body when we've crossed this threshold. I've worked with traders who will flip into a state of euphoria with one winning trade. Okay, usually for most people it takes more than one winning trade. But I have worked with people that they'll flip into a state of euphoria with one winning trade. Now the problem with this, and it's a great state of mind to be in. I mean, to be in in virtually a riskless state of mind. I mean, it's like, hey, it's really a cool place to be. But the problem is that when we're in a state of euphoria as a trader, it's virtually guaranteed that we're going to make a trading error. And the kind of trading error that we'll make in a state of euphoria usually has to do with position size. So for an example, if you normally only trade 1,000 shares, in a state of euphoria, it's like, okay, let's mortgage the house. Okay? It's like, let's go to 10,000, 20, 30, whatever. 1,000 shares. Because, you see, you absolutely know for a fact you wouldn't be putting this trade on if it wasn't going to work. See, you know for a fact. See, because you don't have any ability to perceive risk at all. Now the problem, even though it could even end up being a winning trade, it's not that the trade might not end up being a winner, but here's typically what's going to happen. If you're a normal 1,000 share trader and you go up to 10,000 shares, if when you put 1,000 shares on and the market went against you 5 cents a share, wouldn't be any big deal. You got 10,000 shares on when you absolutely knew for a fact that the trade was a winner, and it goes 5 or 10 cents against you. It has the potential to flip you into a state of pure, unadulterated terror. Instantaneously, you'll go from euphoria to a state of terror in one instant, because your expectations about what was going to happen were so resolute, it creates a psychological shock that puts you in a state of mind freeze. Mind freeze. Mind freeze is when you are conscious of what is happening, but find yourself totally immobilized to do anything about it. And so if the market happens to go 10 cents against you but keeps on going, okay, you just sit there and watch, completely immobilized, while the market takes your money away, until finally something flips you out of that, and you say, you just come back to your senses and you had enough and you get out of the trade. I know that's probably never happened to anybody in this group, but I've worked with many people who it has happened with. So this is not something unfamiliar to anybody here.
The terror part, not the
It's like going literally from a state of mind. It's like literally going from heaven to hell instantaneously. And keep in mind the dynamics here. It was all based on your expectation. It's all based on your expectation. That's okay. So when we're talking about consistency, see, this goes back to when I was doing the contrast. Okay, is that to experience a winning trade, you need nothing. I'm not saying that you don't put something into it. But the fact is, you need nothing. There's no skills that are required to experience a winning trade. But to experience consistent results as a trader, the kind of results that you can rely on as an income, there's some pretty kind of profound skills that we're talking about, are we not? You got to have an edge. You got to have a plan on how to execute the edge. You got to be able to execute the plan flawlessly, or at least without a minimum number of errors, or otherwise they're going to detract from your results. You got to be able to recognize when you might have some self-sabotaging beliefs that are rising to the surface, to saying, hey, this is too much money. Why do you think it is that you have probably read in some of the trading books, I'm sure you have read at some point, that someone gives you the advice that when you have windfall profits to stop trading and take a vacation? Why do you think that advice exists? Why do you think people have written that down? I just gave you the underlying dynamics for why that's true. It's not just the euphoria. No, it's not the terror afterward. It's the possibility for self-sabotaging beliefs coming in and saying, I am not worth this much money. Even though it's what I want. It's what I desire. It's what I've been working for. It doesn't mean that you believe you really deserve it. You have to believe you really deserve it to keep it. Or at least recognize that you don't necessarily believe it and don't do anything to give it away. In other words, take a vacation, put it in the bank, let yourself get used to having it, and at which point you'll say, you know what, yeah, I do deserve this money. And then you'll be less likely to give it away. One of the best examples that I could give you to illustrate this is a floor trader that I work with. Again, another bond trader, not as big as the other bond trader that I referred to earlier. He was the kind of trader who had this reputation as being completely consistent. When I met him, he would make anywhere from, I'd say, $15,000 to $20,000 a day. That was his daily thing. Okay, day in, day out, $15,000, $20,000 a day. Never had these catastrophic bad days. That was his reputation. And it was true. And so what did he need me for? Well, he had hired a bunch of guys to trade his money, thinking that he's going to... This is very common. You kind of have a funny look, but this is very common in Chicago, where once you become successful and established, what you want to do is bring in, as many, let's say, bring in young talent that you can, teach your particular techniques and just, multiply what you make based on their efforts. I mean, that's, But the problem is that the guys that he brought into his group, they were, I don't know how to put it. I want to be nice. They were just basically leeches. I mean, a lot of them, when I, talk to them, it's like, there's some of them I don't even think wanted to be traders. They just saw the opportunity to be able to get money from him and the opportunity to do something they hadn't done before. And it was, these were not the kind of people that you would hire under these circumstances. They weren't really suited for it. In many cases, weren't really suited for it at all, especially to trade down on the floor. So he wanted ideas on how to build this group up into a really successful trading group. And while we were talking one day, we had ordered lunch in. A delivery person came with the lunch, and he was a devout Catholic, by the way. This is a very important part of this. He was a devout Catholic, and he's so devout that he carried a rosary with him all the time. He had a rosary in his pocket. And so when he paid, took his wallet out of his pocket, paid for the lunch, and he took the change, and he just sort of unconsciously started to put the change in the same pocket with his rosary. And then we realized what he was doing. He took his hand out like that. And I said, well, hey, what's going on? He said, well, I can't put money in, can't have money touch the rosary. And so we started exploring his beliefs about money and his beliefs about religion in relationship to money, and certainly his beliefs about the Catholic Church and their beliefs about money. And, and it's something he never really thought about. But when he thought about, the Catholic Church certainly doesn't believe that money's dirty. And so why should he believe that money's dirty? In that respect. In other words, it's not spiritual to have money. in a way that, in other words, there's a dichotomy in his mind between his ability to make money in the pit, and yet you would think that in this kind of a situation, he would be giving his money away because he felt guilty about having it. Well, he didn't give it away as a trader because he was just too strong of a trader to do it. But he was giving it away with this organization, the kind of people that he had around him. In other words, it wasn't going out the front door, the money was going out the back door. So he did find a way to extract that money from his life. And so, like I said, we had this pretty in-depth conversation about his beliefs about money, religion, the Catholic Church, their beliefs about money, realized the inconsistencies. And so as we're coming to kind of reconciliation about this, I gave him an exercise to see if in fact he'd really accepted what it is that we were talking about. And what do you think the exercise was? Come on, what do you think the exercise was? It's not that hard.
Go ahead, put some money in that pocket.
Yeah, that's right. Put money in the pocket with the rosary. Put the money and the rosary together. He couldn't do it. He literally, his arm, he tried to put the money in. It was like it got like he could not do it. His beliefs that we talked about were so strong that it literally wouldn't consciously let him do it. But he worked on it. See, he wanted to get to the point where he recognized the validity of the things that we were talking about, and so he did want to do it, and so he kept on trying. It took him about a week. And once he got the money in with the rosary, he had like all these conflicting beliefs he had about the nature of money and the guilt that he felt over it. They just sort of all melted away, and he fired all these people. He didn't even try to make them traders because he realized that these were not guys that really wanted to be traders. He realized what he was doing. He realized he was just giving his money away. What gives the professional trader the ability to execute their trades without error? They are confident, meaning they are no longer encumbered by the same fears that plague the typical trader. Trading without fears is learned mental skills. I've already given you examples of mental skills. Remember what we say about the ability not to choke? Okay? That would be an example of a mental skill. Learning to trade without fear, hesitation, or internal conflicts is a function of believing that you don't have to know what's going to happen next on a trade-by-trade basis to win or make consistent money. This is the heart of it right here, everyone. Okay? This is the heart of it. And again, we're still in the introduction, believe it or not. Okay? So I'm going to reinforce all this. But eventually what you're going to do is get to the point where you believe that you do not have to know what is going to happen next on a trade-by-trade basis. This trade and this particular trade and this particular trade, you don't have to enter these trades thinking that you know what's going to happen next to win, to make consistent money.
And that's what the video was about. So I encourage you guys to replay the video, go back and watch part 1 through 4 to catch up with part 5 so that you're up to date on the information, right? Watch it in the series and don't just skip. Okay, again, give yourself some grace. Take your time. If you need to rewind it to come back, that's what you guys should do. But trading is a very particular skill. I don't think it's for everyone, but everybody should try it because you never know what you could do and what you could find out when you really start trading from a perspective of probabilities and edge and what it really takes. So I encourage you guys to continue to study. All right, learn these things. All right, replay the video, go back and watch, take your notes. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. And again, that is Mark Douglas. All right, thinking like a professional. And this is the Unique Trading Group. I'm Coach UV. This is where strategy meets mindset and discipline turns into income. Until the next time, guys. All right, part 6 is coming soon. Make sure to check out those links below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. All right, thank you for your time. Until the next time, peace.